When we think of Victorian murder, we probably imagine cloaked villains wielding knives and stalking dark alleyways. Jack the Ripper or Dr. Crippen might spring to mind. But some of Glasgow's most notorious killings took place in the heart of respectable society. Together, 4 of them became known as the city's square mile of murder. The Madeleine Smith case became so celebrated that a Hollywood film was made about it. And why not? With all the right ingredients: sex, poisoning, and the ultimate femme fatale.
There is some evidence in the letters of her growing realisation that this relationship with Emile must come to an end.
I think that she probably was a wild child. It's got all the feelings of somebody that had a joy of life, but none of an intent that would have hurt anyone. Absolutely believe that.
The Glasgow poisoning case continued to be covered in the press for a long time.
But it's so much more than that. It's basically a window into the Victorian middle classes in Glasgow. Did she do it or didn't she? I don't think we can ever know, and we'll just have to live with that.
Royal Exchange Square, one of the finest examples of Georgian architecture in Glasgow. It was designed in the 1820s by David Hamilton. His daughter, Jane, married one of Hamilton's architects, James Smith. The Hamilton Smiths were prosperous, influential, church-going, but the family was to be ripped apart by a scandal such as Glasgow had never seen before. Did David Hamilton's granddaughter get away with the murder of her lover?
The interest in the trial wasn't only because we had a middle-class girl from a very good family being charged with a horrific offence. We also, on top of that, had a fulfilment, let's say, of a perception that whilst women might not have the physical strength to kill men, that men would always be at danger of women poisoning them.
Police involvement, possible murder. For one of the most prominent families in Glasgow, their private lives been exposed to the public gaze. It doesn't get any worse.
On the 9th of July 1857, after a sensational trial, Madeleine Smith walked free from Edinburgh High Court. She fled the capital by carriage and headed to the family's lavish summer house on the Clyde coast. She was free under the controversial Scottish verdict that pretty much means, we believe you did it, but we haven't got enough evidence to convict you.
The verdict was not proven by a majority. The majority in each of the charges was 13-2, so a substantial majority. And it's reported that the 2 who dissented from the not proven or the not guilty verdict supported a guilty verdict being returned.
The verdict of not proven means that, they keep us guessing. We still don't know, and I would argue we still can't know whether she did or did not do it.
Smith was just 22. She had stood accused of poisoning her lover. But the fact that she had a lover in the first place scandalised Scotland and beyond.
Madeleine was born in 1835. At this time, the family lived in Royal Exchange Square in Glasgow, but soon moved to Regent Street, where they lived for a couple of years. Business was good.
By the time these bizarre events unfolded, the Smith family was living in a stylish house on India Street. They moved only within their own wealthy circles.
Victorian class society, I guess, was pretty rigid, but like any class society, certainly in the industrial era, there was a degree of social mobility. But if you go beneath the surface, the Victorians were extremely complex, and all these stereotypes that have followed, you know, the Victorians through the ages can be blown apart by the Madeleine Smith story.
An archive of deeply personal letters remains the best testimony to what might have happened. But Madeleine Smith did not retain the letters she received. The ones she sent, however, have carried her extraordinary personality down through the years.
Madeleine and Emile had an avid correspondence with each other. Sadly, we really only have Madeleine's side of that correspondence still, because the agreement between the parties was that the letters would be destroyed.
I am writing at the breakfast table, Papa beside me, thinking I am writing an order. Dearest, come this evening. I hope all shall end well and we should spend an hour together.
These days, Sauchiehall Street is a busy commercial hub. In Victorian times, however, it was a grand thoroughfare giving on to some of the most desirable residential areas in Britain. This was Madeleine Smith's stomping ground. As the eldest daughter of a wealthy architect, her path in life was pretty much mapped out.
Madeleine, at 16 years of age, went off to boarding school in London for 2 years. A common thing to occur at that time for a girl at that age, to learn the skills she would need to be the wife of a gentleman.
Glasgow at that time was a thriving, confident, industrial city, and it probably could match many European cities in terms of the cultural fare that it had, you know, to offer. And so it was a really vibrant, thriving community.
Into this vibrant community wandered an odd bachelor from overseas. He seemed at last to have found a place to call home.
Emile L'Angelier was a native of Jersey, and he was born there in 1823. So contrary to popular belief, he wasn't a foreigner, but in fact was a British citizen.
Because of his appearance, because of his accent, he was generally regarded as a foreigner. And there was this notion that foreigners, particularly the French, couldn't control their emotions, they were passionate.
L'Angelier was a drifter who picked up what work he could as a clerk in warehouses and garden nurseries. He had come to know and like Scotland, although a spell of homesickness had driven him home to the Channel Islands. Then, after 5 years working in Paris, he came back.
In 1852, Emile returned to Glasgow, having come via Edinburgh and Dundee.
He would have had no difficulty catching her eye. I mean, he wasn't tall, he was actually quite small. I think something he was acutely aware of and probably not too happy about. But he was, I think the best way to describe him is that he was exotic. The sideburns and his hair was kind of almost sort of flicked out at the sides. So he was, and sartorially, he was probably pretty smart and dressed just a bit more stylishly and a bit more, as I say, exotically than his Glasgow counterparts. He's flamboyant. He's flamboyant and he's going to attract the eye, definitely.
L'Angelier regularly boasted of his connections with the French aristocracy. This was unlikely, since he came from a poor working-class family. For over a century, it was thought that this was the only portrait of the Smith family to have survived. Now, the identity of those pictured is disputed. It adds even more mystery to the tale. But we do have a pretty clear picture of how Madeleine Smith passed her days.
Shopping was becoming quite a big deal at that time. You just see the beginnings of department stores, etc. So, you know, you see lots more women in the centre of cities. She paraded up and down Sauchiehall Street and Buchanan Street, sometimes on her own, sometimes with her sister, sometimes with other young men.
One day in March 1855, Emile L'Angelier and a friend were walking in the city centre when they spotted Madeleine and her sister Bessie in a shop. L'Angelier asked his friend to introduce them.
And obviously what happened was that she had caught L'Angelier's eye, and he had obviously caught her eye. And you can just imagine them eyeing each other up, you know, from a distance. Maybe there were some people that would find that too foppish, but clearly Madeleine liked the fact that he looked different.
The Smiths were well known by sight in the city. For most working-class men, approaching their eldest daughter was unthinkable. But L'Angelier was not like most other men.
They commenced a correspondence with a few letters, and Madeleine, in April of that year, disclosed to her father that she was corresponding with Emile.
Emile L'Angelier kept all of Madeleine's letters. From the very first one, she writes of how happy she is that they have become as familiar friends, and even indulges in poetry.
I never cast a flower away, the gift of one who cared for me. A little flower, a faded flower, but it was done reluctantly.
Both of her parents forbade her to continue that correspondence or to have any contact with him, on the basis that he was poorly paid clerk in a firm, and he was really not of the correct station in life and did not have the correct social connections to make any match.
She was definitely a complex character. We see from when she was very young, she was spirited.
You know, she's a very passionate young woman who's clearly assertive and headstrong, and is going against the wishes of her parents, the norms of society, the expectations of young girls of her station in life and age.
Young middle-class girls could get a decent academic education. Having said that, yes, they did learn the accomplishments, how to draw, paint, play musical instruments, etc. Whether Madeleine was bright or not, it really is impossible to say if she was academically bright. We just can't know that. She certainly was spirited. She was manipulative, most definitely.
At first, at least, Smith was besotted. In her early letters, she refers to herself as his darling wife, while he calls her Emile L'Angelier. Madeleine was 12 years younger than her suitor, although they both knew that the idea of marrying would hardly find favour with her family. The relationship quickly grew more intense.
Sex outside of marriage was totally forbidden. There was no doubt about that. And those who did have sex outside of marriage, you know, got the censure of the church, the authorities, other people, certainly, you know, amongst the middle classes.
Their only opportunity, therefore, to meet was secret late-night liaisons. So the clandestine relationship between the two of them continued.
Madeleine was an enthusiastic writer, often sending a dozen letters a day to family and friends. The penny post had been introduced and mail deliveries were frequent. She and L'Angelier were able to thrive on private, daily communication.
You could write a letter one day and it would be delivered the same day. I mean, the post, I think at one time there might have been 4 deliveries, but certainly at Madeleine's time there'd be 3.
L'Angelier cherished Madeleine's letters. She sent him upwards of 200 at least. The impassioned writer might have been penning a romantic novel.
The thought of seeing you so soon makes me feel happy and glad. Oh, to hear you again speak to me, call me your own wife, and tell me that you love me. Can you wonder that I feel happy?
Madeleine was the supreme flirt. And if we go by what Madeleine was up to, young women flirted constantly. She certainly did when there was men about. You know, she was playful with them.
But dear, I shall not flirt. I do not think it is right of me. I should only be pleasant to gentlemen. Free with none, my pet, in conversation, but yourself. I shall endeavour to please you in this.
You know, you would be pleased with me. I have not flirted once this year in the letters dated 14th of January, which I think is hilarious. I think it sums Madeleine up.
Several acquaintances later describe L'Angelier as selfish and convinced of his ability to seduce any woman he wanted, and Madeleine was only his latest love interest.
Emile's character is reported by witnesses at the trial as being a conceited and depressive individual. He seemed to be very assured that ladies found him attractive. And there is evidence not only from his relationship with Madeleine, but a prior relationship that he had with a lady from Fife, that he intended to improve his station in life through marriage. This was indeed an ambition that was going to be difficult to fulfil. It seems that when jilted, Emile took that rejection very badly, and depressive episodes were accompanied by suicidal attempts in the past, according to his friends who gave evidence at the trial.
James Smith eventually put his foot down and told his daughter she must not see L'Angelier again. But he was not prepared to let her go. The Smith family business had commissioned the build of a large house in Rue near Helensburgh. This followed a slump in their business when James Smith had been forced into bankruptcy. His fortunes were now turning once more. While the men worked during the week, Madeleine, her mother and the rest of the family took up residence there over the summer of 1856.
The feeling that you get when you live here, you have a feeling of protection, that you are away from the hustle and bustle of life and you're surrounded by beauty.
The palatial design of the property, its vast size, its multiple rooms, its turrets, its extensive grounds, I think were almost an act of defiance by James Smith. He and his father had been humiliated in terms of social standing by being bankrupted. Then James really made his stamp by building this incredible house.
Their times had been hard, and this was them coming back up again. And of course, they wanted to make a spectacular. And this really is still the largest house in this whole area. It sits up, it looks like a castle, and it's in a fabulous position.
The house was designed by James Smith himself in the Scottish baronial style. An authority on the trial, known as the Glasgow poisoning case, advocate Claire Connolly visits it for the first time.
Did you know the background to the house when you bought the house?
No. I learnt fairly quickly, but I didn't. What I knew was the house was beautiful, it was special, it was artistic, and it just made me feel good.
And of course, Madeleine chose to occupy the lower level of the house, where normally the servants were confined in the work that they did. But it gave her access to the gardens, and the gardens were, of course, very important in her relationship with Emile.
That's right, that's right. But also I think it shows more about her. She was, they called her, a wild child, and I think she was resentful about her family buying this house, which was out in the sticks. You know, it was miles away as far as she was concerned. So I could imagine that she was, you know, putting the hand up to her parents in some way and making her own space down here among the servants and unknown to her parents, of course, the meeting place, the tryst with her boyfriend. I've never had any doubt, but there is goodness in this house. It sings. And I have wanted to try and embrace who this person is.
L'Angelier was meeting Madeleine at the house on the coast after dark, in the garden and sometimes inside while the rest of the family slept. And they were becoming very well acquainted indeed.
It's the following summer here in Rue at the house Rue that the couple finally consummate the relationship.
Her letters imply that she enjoyed sex, debunking the myth that Victorian women were straight-laced.
There was lots of different contradictory attitudes. And for example, some scientists believed that women couldn't conceive unless they achieved orgasm. Others, of course, thought that women, did not enjoy sex and it was simply for reproduction. But when you read doctors' views, etc., you'll see that women actually were expected to enjoy sex, but within the confines of the marital bed.
In what proved to be a rather rash move, Madeleine wrote a lengthy letter to L'Angelier, detailing what had taken place. From that point on, she took to using the word love to describe intercourse, usually underlining it 3 times in heavy ink, and her tone was becoming weary and apologetic.
The way that she talks about sexual arousal has a very authentic ring to it, the way that she feels. So when she was resisting, it wasn't because, I don't really like this, it was because she felt it was the wrong thing to do.
It's clear that Emile very much blames Madeleine and chastises her for having given in to his demands. He seems to take no responsibility whatsoever for the fact that the couple have had premarital sex, and where he's not blaming Madeleine, he blames Madeleine's parents, saying that they have forced them into this position of taking this step, behaving, in his words, immorally.
What comes through is of a man who is lacks moral scruples, who's priggish, who's unpleasant, somebody you really wouldn't want to be with.
I often think I must be very, very stupid in your eyes. You must be disappointed with me. I wonder if you like me in the least.
The couple referred to being unofficially engaged by this time. There has always been doubt as to how seriously Madeleine took this notion, though she did write of a future with him and flattered him excessively.
She's very subservient to Emile and makes reference constantly in her letters to the fact that he is improving her, that under his instruction she will become better. And from this one-sided correspondence, we get a picture of Emile as someone who's very controlling, eroding her confidence, and through that making her dependent on him for his approval and for his affection.
He was jealous, he was controlling. He has been described as excitable and lacking in self-control and self-possession. He was incredibly jealous, insanely jealous of Madeleine, maybe understandably, because she had a much more interesting and colourful life than him.
Always yearning for the social whirl of Glasgow city centre, did Smith simply grow bored of L'Angelier? Certainly by the summer of 1856, she had started returning his letters and eventually destroying them when he persisted. Still, she seems to have wanted the best of both worlds. She kept up their assignations around all her many social engagements.
She enjoyed going out. She particularly enjoyed meeting young men. And remember, her father was an architect. He designed the McClellan Galleries. He also was fairly briefly in local politics. So he'd a really vast network of friends, business associates, etc. So Madeleine, didn't have to wait too long before there was a social occasion that she could go to.
By the end of that year, Madeleine's letters were becoming brief and cold in tone. Did she tire of him just as quickly as she had fallen for him in the first place? Certainly any romantic ideas of being poor but happy had long gone.
And as the letters begin to cool, at the same time she becomes more assertive and begins to chastise him. And we see perhaps the young woman becoming less in love with the man she's been corresponding with.
But the relationship was far from over. The family's latest Glasgow townhouse was an impressive residence in Blythewood Square. To this day it is known as Madeleine Smith House. Her bedroom was in the basement, near the back door. Smith's parents now planned to have her married off to a man of her own class. The volatile L'Angelier would not be so easily dismissed. What had started as a passionate liaison was becoming a dangerous game.
Historians have generally suggested that in the 19th century you see the rise of romantic love, people marrying for love and not for money or for position or whatever. But it was expected that they would marry within their class.
This relationship with Emile must come to an end because now a socially more acceptable union is really on the cards.
William Minich was a local business associate of James Smith. He began to woo Madeleine, and this time she seemed all too happy to do what her parents wanted.
James and Janet Smith didn't only very much like Minich, but he was of the correct social position in society. He earned the requisite salary, that he was a desirable match for Madeleine.
It wasn't necessarily the case that parents vetoed everybody that they met outside the circle, but they really only came into contact with people of their own class. So it was kind of self-selecting.
When William Minich proposed to Smith in January 1857, she readily accepted. The wedding was set for June. Was her affair with L'Angelier just a rebellious game that she always planned on ending in any case? Without his letters, which she destroyed, we can't say for sure. But whatever her thinking, Madeleine now had to wipe out any evidence of a sexual relationship.
Because of course if the content of the letters was made public, if it was known that this couple had had premarital intercourse, then Madeleine would be regarded as soiled goods and would really be off the marriage market.
It was absolutely crucial to her that nobody should find out that she had had sexual relations with L'Angelier. There's absolutely no doubt that she would have been ostracised.
Madeleine pleaded time and again with L'Angelier to return her passionate letters. Time and again, he refused.
He's beginning to get on her nerves, it's just tiring of him. Minich's introduced onto the scene. Maybe the sexual relationship isn't quite as exciting as it had been in the beginning. And I think that's a combination of all of these factors, which means that she reverts to type, to doing what is expected of her gender and of her class.
We see her desperation trying to bring the relationship to an end, and then there's almost a dawning that she realises that's not going to happen.
Trapped by circumstances, did Smith decide to trap her lover and end the relationship by deadly means? Or was she innocently trying to remain on good terms? The fact is that as the winter passed, she continued to meet with L'Angelier at Blythewood Square at night. In later statements, she admitted that they often drank cocoa together, with her passing him a cup from her basement bedroom.
Now, we can imagine that February in 1857 would be very cold, and therefore the offer of a hot drink to a man who's lingering in the street because he can't gain entry to his loved one's house would probably be very much welcomed.
From this point on, only Madeleine Smith herself could provide us with the full truth of what happened. Emile L'Angelier was known to take narcotics such as laudanum. He was by now suffering from regular stomach cramps and vomiting attacks. On the 21st of February 1857, records show that Smith went to Murdoch's, a chemist, and bought 6 pennyworth of arsenic. She signed for it in her own name and told the chemist it was for use in the garden. Arsenic was also a popular cosmetic at the time.
It was apparently quite fashionable to use it, on the skin. It kind of made the complexion paler. It sort of whitened it a bit. Health and safety rules weren't quite what they are today. You had to sign a register, a logbook, to say that you had bought arsenic, and of course there was only certain places that you could buy it. And it was commonly used for killing rats. That is true. It's also been said that it was used as an aphrodisiac. In fact, some people have suggested that the presence of arsenic in L'Angelier's body could be explained by the fact that he took it as an aphrodisiac.
In February and March 1857, when Emile returned home suffering from terrible stomach cramps and had severe attacks of vomiting, culminating in the attack that finally resulted in his death. An important piece of evidence that was not admitted in the trial was Emile's pocketbook, namely his diary.
L'Angelier's pocket diary stated that he met Madeleine on the 19th of February and that shortly thereafter he had an attack of illness. A further 2 arsenic purchases by Madeleine were registered by Glasgow chemists on the 6th and the 18th of March. But details of the couple meeting thereafter have never been clear.
There appear to be 2 modes through which Madeleine was able to give L'Angelier coffee and cocoa, whether it did or not contain arsenic. On a couple of occasions, he was able to go to the house during the day and be with her in the drawing room. And at that time, it's understood that they drank cocoa together. The other time was that he would call late in the evening, about 11 o'clock in the evening, to the rear of the property.
The final days of L'Angelier's life are shady. He visited Bridge of Allen, which was then a popular spa town. There he received a forwarded letter from Madeleine asking to see him tomorrow night. But crucially, that letter was undated. On Sunday, the 22nd of March, he travelled back to Glasgow. Around 2:30 a.m, L'Angelier's landlady let him into his lodgings. He was in agony. The landlady contacted a doctor who recommended medication, but did not visit.
Emile L'Angelier died on Monday, the 23rd of March, 1857. A post-mortem was carried out on Tuesday the 24th, and the cause of death was said to be poisoning. On that day, on the Tuesday, the French consul visited Madeleine in Blythswood Square and suggested to her that it would be better that she admit that she had seen Emile on the previous Sunday, the evening before he died. Madeleine denied any such thing.
We do know that he had relationships with other women before Madeleine, and that he claimed to have tried to commit suicide on one occasion when the relationship broke up. It's hard to know how true these descriptions are.
On the next day, on the Wednesday, Emile was buried in the Ramshorn Cemetery in Glasgow. The rumours that Emile L'Angelier had been poisoned by arsenic and had become public because Emile's body had been exhumed on the Saturday and a further post-mortem had been carried out at the request of his former employers. And that post-mortem on the Saturday confirmed that not only had Emile L'Angelier been poisoned, but that he had enough arsenic in his body to kill 40 men. And there was evidence of arsenic, not just in his stomach, but in all of his vital organs, including his brain.
The cause of L'Angelier's death was now public, and a scandal was brewing. Madeleine Smith never denied their relationship and did not even shirk from telling William Minich, her fiancé, that she had been having the affair. On the basis of her letters, which were found in his lodgings, and the results of the post-mortem, she was arrested.
Madeleine couldn't give evidence. At that time, a criminal accused was not allowed to give evidence. And really her only statement that we hear, her voice is only heard during the trial, when the statement she made to the sheriff is read out, which is consistent with other accounts that she gave, that she was innocent, that she hadn't seen Emile for a number of weeks.
Madeleine did not deny that she had purchased arsenic. The trial commenced on the 30th of June in Edinburgh. It was presided over by 3 of Scotland's most respected judges. The Lord Advocate spoke warmly of the accused.
And indeed he opened his address to the jury by saying that he had the most terrible of tasks in prosecuting this case, and in particular this young woman.
When the passionate letters were read out in court, the jury were aghast to hear details of the affair. Public appetite for the story grew, with every twist and turn of the trial reported daily.
It wasn't just Glasgow people that were interested in this case. I mean, it went viral. I mean, it went worldwide. I mean, some people even in the newspapers described Madeleine as a heroine because they felt that she was like a lamb to the slaughter, and L'Angelier had plucked one of their innocents, you know, out of the fold.
The prosecution case was very much a circumstantial one, wherein they relied on the evidence that Madeleine had purchased arsenic and the complete lack of evidence that Emile L'Angelier had purchased arsenic. So whilst the defence team wished to suggest to the court that Emile L'Angelier was a depressive personality who in fact had taken his own life because his love affair had come to an end, it was very difficult to in any way substantiate that claim when there was no record of any pharmacy in Glasgow having sold L'Angelier arsenic.
And far from a murderess, the overwhelming view of Madeleine was as a wholesome young woman of virtue.
A criminal trial at that time in Scotland comprised of an all-male jury of 15 individuals. And indeed there's a range of professional backgrounds of jurors in Madeleine's trial. There are professional people, teachers, there are farm labourers. So it really is a jury of your peers, except of course in this case there's no one female. That could of course been to Madeleine's advantage, and indeed when her defence counsel addressed the jury, they used terminology to very much reinforce the gendered roles of society at the time, where men were there to protect women, that women were deemed to be vulnerable.
And the mark of British masculinity was self-control and self-possession, you know, ruling one's passions, not to be ruled by one's passions. And of course, he was seen as the polar opposite of that. So some of it may have come from prejudice, the fact that he was a foreigner.
And indeed, the costs of her criminal defence have been suggested to be £4,000, which was an enormous amount of money in 1857. And this money was put up by one of Madeleine's rich uncles, business associates of James Smith, and also the firm that William Minich worked for and was a partner in.
A guilty verdict would see her hanged, But by every account, she remained composed, as the prosecution failed to produce any hard evidence. The two most critical questions were, did the lovers meet at all shortly before L'Angelier's death? And if so, did she give him poisoned cocoa? The prosecution could not fully prove either. There was much corroborated evidence: the purchase of the poison, the relationship itself, and the acrimony when it ended. But as the judge directed the jury, they were to separate suspicion from truth.
Charges 1 and 2 alleged that Madeleine had supplied or given arsenic to Emile L'Angelier. But on charge 1 relating to this, the verdict was by majority not guilty. On the second charge, similarly, of supplying or caused to be taken arsenic by Emile L'Angelier, the verdict was not proven by a majority. And on the third charge of the murder of Emile L'Angelier, the verdict was not proven by a majority.
When the third count of murder was read out as not proven, the public gallery erupted in raucous cheering.
The prison warden who'd been accompanying Madeleine grasped her hand and appeared to be as relieved almost as Madeleine herself at the verdict.
So the evidence is circumstantial, very strong circumstantial evidence, but just that. So I think the verdict was the right one.
It's unlikely that a jury in England would have convicted Madeleine, but of course, as they don't have the not proven verdict, the proper verdict should then have been not guilty.
I am convinced Madeleine didn't do it, but he was poisoned by arsenic. That is a fact. In these days, it was common for people to take arsenic as an aphrodisiac, and I just believe that he took too much by mistake. As simple as that.
The interest in the trial, yes, still goes on, and I think perhaps that's encouraged by the fact that Madeleine had such an interesting life after the trial, and through that life showed herself to be quite an extraordinary woman.
Although forced to leave Scotland because of the scandal, Madeleine Smith was unstoppable.
In the first few years of being here, often there would be a knock on the door, and it would be relations, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nephew, great somethings, and they would tell me of their mother, or their grandmother, I should say, Madeleine Smith. Nonsense, it never happened, because this house has just filled each one of us that's lived here with a feeling of an artistic feeling, a joy for life feeling, and it is the greatest party house ever. So how could there be a murder relating to this house with all that joy?
Could it have been suicide? Was she a calculating killer with a great lawyer? Or was she driven to poison L'Angelier rather than suffer his bullying and stalking any longer? We will never know. Of all the letters Madeleine Smith wrote, the final one we have a glimpse of is perhaps the most chilling. It was not written to L'Angelier, but to the matron of Edinburgh Prison, 4 days after her release. Whatever other conclusions we can come to, one thing is certain: Madeleine Smith had nerves of steel.
Dear Miss Aitken, you should be glad to hear that I am quite well and my spirits are not in the least down. I was delighted with the loud cheer the court gave. I did not feel in the least put about when the jury were out, considering whether they would send me home or keep me. My friend, I know nothing of. I have not seen him. I hear he has been ill, which I don't much care. As soon as I know my arrangements, I shall let you know where I am to be sent to. With kind love, ever believe me, yours sincerely, Madeleine Smith.